Hello, Miss Blaylock here. This is a video to accompany FlexBlock in solving quadratics. First, what I'm going to do is solve by taking the square roots, and I have a worksheet that handed out for FlexBlock. So the first problem, I'm going to go over that one. It's 2n squared minus 12 equals 222. So when you're going to solve by taking square roots, you always want to isolate the squared term. In this case, it's n squared. This particular equation doesn't have a linear term, so there isn't like a 12n. It's just got a quadratic term. So it works out nicely when you're solve by taking the square roots if you don't have a linear term. So the first thing I'm going to do is use the inverse operations, and I'm going to add 12 to both sides. So if I have PEMDAS, adding and subtracting is the last step in the order of operations. So I'm going to add 12 to both sides. And I get 2n squared equals 234. And so now I have the quadratic term here, and it has a leading coefficient of 2, but I need to isolate just the squared term with a variable. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2, and I get n squared equals 117. Now my next step is to take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to take the square root of n squared, which becomes n, and I'm going to take the square root of 117, but I have to consider both the positive and negative solutions. So n equals positive or negative square root of 117. Now 117 is actually divisible by 9 and divisible by 13. So if I want to reduce the radical, I would have square root of 9, which is 3, and square root of 13, which is not reducible or irreducible. So this would be n equals plus or minus the square root of 3 root 13, and so you could say, you could leave it like this, or you could say n equals 3 root 13, or n equals negative 3 root 13. So those are your solutions. That's how you take the square roots of both sides, solve by taking square roots. So just something to look out for is you don't have a linear term. That's a good time to use solve by taking square roots. And make sure that you use inverse operations to isolate your squared term in order to solve. The only other thing I notice people do sometimes is forget the positive and negative. So don't forget that.